So, American culture celebrates Easter on one day during the year. But for us, Easter isn't just a day, it's a whole season. And this Easter season lasts 7 weeks. But even that's not quite right. Easter is much more than even a season. It's a way of life. The resurrection story was so influential to the early Jewish followers of Christ that they made radical changes. They used to worship on the 7th day of the week. This day, according to the book of Exodus, was the day that was supposed to be holy and set apart for worship. But the resurrection caused the followers of Christ to disregard this command found in Scripture. The resurrection was such an important event that it changed everything, including the day of worship and including how they interpreted commands in Scripture. So they changed it to Sunday, the day of worship, the first day of the week, the day that Jesus resurrected, so that they could remind themselves throughout the year that they were people formed by the resurrection. They were a resurrection people, and we are a resurrection people, called to live into the Easter story. And that story has a radical claim. The death of Good Friday doesn't have the last word. The power of empire and the power of violence do not have the last word. Resurrection has the last word. God's love has the last word, because in the end, love wins. As the choir sang this morning, nothing, not even death, can separate us from the love of God. But the disciples had to go through Good Friday to get to Easter Sunday. They experienced the violent empire murdering their leader, Jesus. On Good Friday, they went through despair at the hands of the Roman power system. Little did they know that on that Good Friday, they would be shown an even higher power than the Roman Empire. Little did they know on that soon God was going to raise Jesus from the dead and reveal that the power of Rome and the power of death was nothing in comparison to the power of God's love. But that hope was almost impossible for the disciples to see on Good Friday and Holy Saturday. Instead, they lived in fear of the Roman Empire, and they lived in serious doubt of the last 3 years of their lives. They gave those 3 years to following Jesus, and now their leader was dead, killed by the empire. They lost their sense of identity. They were the disciples of Jesus, but who were they now? And what was Rome going to do to them next? The disciples learned that sometimes you have to go through Good Friday in order to get to Easter Sunday. And we are learning that today too. Many of us are going through a Good Friday moment. We know that life is not permanent. Some of us are reaching the age where death seems near. Some of us are taking care of family members where death seems near for them. Others of us are facing potential job loss or the loss of friends. And the media is constantly telling us that things are going downhill in our country and we should be very worried. The anxiety about potential loss and the erosion of our country is a Good Friday moment that for many of us is almost too difficult to bear. And it leads us to ask the same questions that the disciples asked. Who are we? Who am I? Who are we as a country? What are we doing here? What's the point of it all? And where do we find hope? When confronted with these kinds of heavy existential questions about life and death and suffering and hope, it's always important to ask yourself one essential question. Has Stephen Colbert already answered this? In a speech delivered to graduating students at Northwestern University, Colbert said that after he graduated from that university, he did improvisation at Chicago's famous Second City. He stated that improv taught him something important about life. He said, "Now there are very few rules to improv, but one of the things I was taught very early on is that you are not the most important person in the scene. Everybody else is. And if everybody else is more important than you are, you will naturally pay attention to them and serve them. But the good news is that you are in the scene too. So hopefully to them, you are the most important person, and they will serve you. No one is leading. You are all following the follower, serving the servant. You cannot win in improv, and life is an improvisation. You have no idea what is going to happen next, and you are mostly just yanking ideas out of your bottom as you are going along. And like improv, you cannot win your life. In my experience, you will truly serve only what you love, because service is love made visible. If you love friends, you will serve friends. If you love community, you will serve community. If you love money, you will serve your money. And if you love only yourself, you will serve only yourself. And you will have only yourself. So no winning. Instead, try to love others and serve others, and hopefully find those who will love and serve you in return." I love that quote. Life is improv. You never know what is going to happen next, and we all know this to be true. And here's what else improv teaches us about life. We are not meant to be isolated individuals. We are not meant to simply love only ourselves, but to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. In fact, our identity is dependent upon one another. I am not the most important person in this scene called life. You are, and you are, and you are. We're all in this scene together, and we all depend on one another. This improv of life that Colbert talked about was true for the disciples too. There they were, together on that morning when all seemed hopeless. But soon hope emerged right in front of them. It was like the biggest improvisational moment in human history. Jesus was murdered just a few days earlier, and now he appeared in their midst. This same Jesus whom the disciples abandoned and betrayed to the cross just a few days earlier now stood in their midst. And what was this Jesus going to say? If Jesus were like me, he would have brought up that whole desertion at the cross thing. He would have said, "Hey, you jerks, I trusted you, but you abandoned me in my time of need." I probably would have said to Peter, "You promised me that you would stay with me, and you denied me 3 times. And then I would say, "I'm going to start over with some new people because you guys are obviously hopeless." But that would have been bad improv. That would have been the old way of doing things. Instead, Jesus improvised something radically new. The first thing he said to them was, "Peace be with you." It's interesting that All the Gospels tell some version of the resurrection story, and you may know that their versions are slightly different, but they all agree on this one fact. Jesus did not come back like a ghost to haunt his disciples for abandoning him in his time of need. He came back to offer them peace. He came back to offer them forgiveness. And the amazing thing about this forgiveness is that it's universal. The resurrected Jesus reveals that God has no need, no desire for revenge, and no need or desire to punish. Some claim that Jesus ate the fish in our story to prove his resurrection was physical. And that might be part of the reason. But I think there's more to it than that. Throughout his ministry, Jesus taught his disciples that their mission was to love and to serve others. Like a lifelong improv session, Jesus taught them that they were not the most important thing. Love was the most important thing. Forgiveness was the most important thing. Service was the most important thing. Hope was the most important thing. And their relationships were the most important thing. I think it's astonishing that the resurrected Jesus, here in all of his power and glory, asks the disciples to serve him by giving him some fish. He is dependent upon them, and they are dependent upon him. You see, this is so much more than a divine resurrection trick to prove his physical resurrection. It's a reminder about their divine mission. It's a reminder that sometimes life brings fear and anxiety, but in the midst of it all, we're all in this improv of life together. It's a reminder that their mission is not to gain power against others, but to move through the world in nonviolence, forgiveness, and service. And this is our mission too. This is the new life of resurrection, and it's like improv in that it calls us to a new identity. What does this identity look like? Well, the best form of leadership that I know is, hey, I'll go first. So I'll tell you what it looks like for me. I have someone in my life who often makes me miserable. Fortunately, it's not any of you. But maybe you have someone in your life like this. Or maybe you are this person for someone else. Anyway, there are times when this person says things to me that just hurt. Their barbs are like deep paper cuts. They're personal insults. And it's almost as if this person knows exactly what to say to push my buttons. And I started thinking, well, if this person is making my life miserable, I'm going to make their life miserable. And so I waited for moments when I could make digs and subtle insults back. I justified my behavior by thinking, maybe this person will realize just how painful this is, and they'll stop doing this to me. But that never worked. In fact, my behavior just made me feel worse. After I tried to make this person's life miserable, I became all the more miserable. I don't know if my digs had any effect on this person, but I know that they had an effect on me. I felt like I was turning into a big jerk because I was. I was losing my soul and began to hate myself when I was around this person. It was like I was dying inside because I was living the old life and I needed a resurrection. So I decided to change and do some creative improv. Part of that change was to create intentional and healthy barriers and separation between me and this person. But even more importantly, I stopped taking this person so seriously. And I began to take ownership of my own buttons. I realized that I was in control of them, not this person. This person began to have less and less power over me. She no longer made me feel a certain way. Instead of responding with bitterness, I began to respond with some more improv, with either light humor or by simply walking to another room. For me, the resurrected life is a work in progress. I constantly find myself going back to the old ways. And when I do, I meet the resurrected Jesus. In his eternal patience, Jesus comes to me in unexpected ways and through unexpected people, but he always says the same thing. He says, Adam, peace be with you. Let's try something new. Let's try some forgiveness. Let's try some improv. So no matter what we're going through, may we hear the voice of the resurrected Jesus say to us, peace be with you. May we do some holy improv, and may we participate in the resurrected life now and forevermore. Amen.
Hi, everyone. This is Adam Erickson, reminding you that no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome at Clackamas United Church of Christ. We are located at 15303 Southeast Webster Road in Milwaukee, Oregon. Our worship service starts at 10:30 on Sundays, except for during the summer months we start at 10 o'clock. If you'd like more information on our church, you can visit our Facebook page or our website at c-ucc.org. You can also reach out to me through email at adam@c-ucc.org. Until next time, grace and peace be with you.